'cause I don't give a fuck what you say. Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Yo, I got a lot of shit to say, so I'ma do this every day. I'll be writing things until I'm fucking buried in my grave.
I'll wing it. Okay. So I thought it might be fun for us to do this again. Bon matin. Every morning I've woken up as Prime Minister. I've been inspired by the resilience, the generosity, and the determination of Canadians. It is the driving force of every single day I have the privilege of serving in this office. That is why, since 2015, I've fought for this country, for you, to strengthen and grow the middle class. Why we rallied to support each other through the pandemic, to advance reconciliation, to defend free trade on this continent, to stand strong with Ukraine and our democracy, and to fight climate change and get our economy ready for the future. We are at a critical moment in the world. Mes chers Canadiens, à chaque matin,
every morning, I've woken up as Prime Minister, and I've been inspired by the resiliency and the generosity and the determination that characterizes Canadians. This is what has driven me on a daily basis, and it's been a privilege to be Prime Minister. This is why, since 2015, I've fought for this country, for you, Canadians, to strengthen the middle class. That's why Canadians mobilized to support each other during the pandemic, to move reconciliation forward, to defend free trade on our continent, and to support Ukraine and democracy, and to fight against climate change as well, and to prepare the economy for the future. We're really going through a critical time in world history.
My friends, as you all know, I'm a fighter. Every bone in my body has always told me to fight because I care deeply about Canadians. I care deeply about this country, and I will always be motivated by what is in the best interest of Canadians. And the fact is, despite best efforts to work through it, Parliament has been paralyzed for months after what has been the longest session of a minority parliament in Canadian history. That's why this morning I advised the Governor-General that we need a new session of Parliament. She has granted this request, and the House will now be prorogued until March 24th. Over the holidays, I've also had a chance to reflect and have had long talks with my family about our future. Throughout the course of my career, any success I have personally achieved has been because of their support and with their encouragement. So last night over dinner, I told my kids about the decision that I'm sharing with you today. I intend to resign as party leader, as Prime Minister, after the party selects its next leader through a robust, nationwide, competitive process. Last night, I asked the President of the Liberal Party to begin that process. This country deserves a real choice in the next election, and it has become clear to me that if I'm having to fight internal battles, I cannot be the best option in that election. Mes chers amis, comme vous savez, je suis un fighter. Dans mon fort intérieur, je me suis toujours battu.
I've always been a fighter. I've always been a fighter because I really care for Canada and Canadians, and have always been driven by what's in the best interests of Canadians as well. And the fact is that despite our best efforts to get through the parliamentary impasse, Parliament has been paralysed for months after the longest minority parliament in the history of our country. This is why this morning I met with the Governor-General to tell her that we need a new parliamentary session, and she granted that request, and the House will therefore be prorogued until the 24th of March. During Christmas, I had time to think and to have long conversations with my family about our future. Throughout my career, all success I've had personally has been due to their support and encouragement. So yesterday evening at dinner, I shared with my children the decision that I'm sharing with you today. I intend to resign as leader of the Liberal Party of Canada and Prime Minister of Canada once the party will have chosen its next leader after a national competitive and robust process. Yesterday evening, I asked the President of the Liberal Party to take the necessary steps. The country deserves a clear choice in the next election. And it's become obvious for me that if I'm focused on internal fights, I can't be the best option for that election. The Liberal Party of Canada is an important institution in the history of our great country and of our democracy as well. A new Prime Minister and leader of the Liberal Party will carry the values and the ideas of the Liberal Party into the next election. I'm looking forward to watching that process over the coming months. We were elected for the third time in 2021 to strengthen the economy after the pandemic and to move the interests of Canada forward in a complex world. And this is what I will continue to do and what we will all continue to do for Canadians.
The Liberal Party of Canada is an important institution in the history of our great country and democracy. A new Prime Minister and leader of the Liberal Party will carry its values and ideals into that next election. I'm excited to see the process unfold in the months ahead. We were elected for the third time in 2021 to strengthen the economy post-pandemic and advance Canada's interests in a complicated world. And that is exactly the job that I and we will continue to do for Canadians. Merci beaucoup, mes amis.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We'll now go to questions, starting with Laurence Martin, Radio-Canada.
Bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau.
Hello, Mr. Trudeau. You wanted to go up against Mr. Poilievre, but there's been infighting in your party for the past few months. Why have you decided to make this decision today? Why did you change your mind? Well, as you know, I'm not someone who steps back from a fight, especially such an important fight for our party and for the country, in fact. But I do this job because the interests and the welfare of our country and our democracy are important to me. And it's become very, very clear that I cannot be the leader to take the party into the next election because of internal divisions.
As you all know, I am a fighter, and I am not someone who backs away from a fight, particularly when a fight is as important as this one is. But I have always been driven by my love for Canada, by my desire to serve Canadians, and by what is in the best interest of Canadians. And Canadians deserve a real choice in the next election. And it has become obvious to me with the internal battles that I cannot be the one to carry the Liberal standard into the next election.
Vous êtes au pouvoir depuis près de 10 ans.
You've been in office for almost 10 years. Canada has changed under your government. If there was one accomplishment that you're most proud of, is there also perhaps a regret that you might want to share with us as well? Well, in 2015, we were elected on a promise of working for the middle class in this country. And this is what we succeeded in doing, I think. We reduced poverty. We helped families. We created an economy that works for many more people in preparation for a digital future and for the greater impact of climate change as well. We've done a lot of work with Canadians. Canada is a better country today, thanks to the work that we've all done over the past few years. Well, a regret. I continue to think that if our electoral system had been changed for people to be able to have a first or second or third choice, parties would have spent more time trying to find common ground rather than trying to build polarization in our country, but I couldn't change our electoral system unilaterally in this country.
We got elected in 2015 to fight for the middle class, and that's exactly what we've done over the past years. We reduced their taxes, we increased the benefits to families, we made sure the economy was focused on working for everyone and not just a few, and that has changed. That has dropped poverty rates in Canada, that has brought more people into the workforce, that has moved us forward on reconciliation in a way that has deeply improved the opportunities and success of Canadians, despite the incredibly difficult times the world is going through right now. There's lots more work to be done, and I know that this party and this country and Canadians will keep doing it. If I have one regret, particularly as we approach this election, well, there are probably many regrets that I will think of. But I do wish that we'd been able to change the way we elect our governments in this country so that people could simply choose a second choice or a third choice on the same ballot, so that parties would spend more time trying to be people's second or third choices, and people would have been looking for things they have in common instead of trying to polarize and divide Canadians against each other. I think in this time, figuring out how to pull together and find common ground remains something that is really important for democracies. But I could not change unilaterally without support of other parties our electoral system. That wouldn't have been responsible.
Prochaine question.
Tonda McCharles, Toronto Star. Prime Minister, up until 3 weeks ago, you were intending to stay, and it seems that the event 3 weeks ago of Ms. Freeland coming out and saying you were firing her as your finance minister was the catalyst that brought us here today. So can you explain your side of what happened there?
Chrystia has been by my side for close to 10 years now. She has been an incredible political partner through just about everything we have done as a government and as a party over the past decade. I had really hoped that she would agree to continue as my deputy prime minister and take on one of the most important files that not just this...
To do what we should have done back in 2020, which is to confirm President Trump for a second term. But we're now here. We're paying attention to what's happening out there all across America because the House is supposed to be gaveling into session right now, and we're going to be here covering it live. In fact, C-SPAN has fired it up.
Reveal to us your
Here's
gracious and eternal perspective.
In our prayer.
Give us the insight you would have us gain when we turn our eyes to you and away from the futile paths that vie for our attention, and distract us from appreciating that your grace plan alone determines our life's work. Guide us in the way we should go, and protect us from any adversarial attitudes that threaten us from within or without. the inimical intrusions that seek to undermine the divine work you desire us to do. Grant us your peace, and may your grace bless us with abundance so that in all things, at all times, we will realize that we have all that we need to succeed in every good work you have ordained us to complete. For your presence, your perspective, your protection, and your peace, we are forever grateful. Lord, in your perfect name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. The chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House the approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by the gentleman from Ohio.
Okay, don't let
Mr.
Kamala
Taylor.
do it. Don't let Kamala do it. Right there, my friends,
Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
up on your screen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Audio's out of sync.
The chair lays before the House a communication.
The Honorable, the Speaker, House of Representatives, sir, pursuant to the permission granted in Clause 2H of Rule 2 of the Rules of the U.S. House of
How's the audio?
Representatives, the clerk received the following message from the Secretary of the Senate on January the 6th, 2025 at 11:09 a.m. that the Senate agreed to Senate Resolution 2, Senate Resolution 5, Senate Resolution 10, Senate Resolution 13. Signed sincerely,
Thank you.
Kevin F. McCumber, Clerk.
Pursuant to Senate Concurrent Resolution 2, 119th Congress, and the order of the House of January 3, 2025, the chair announces the Speaker's appointment of 2 members as tellers on the part of the House to count the electoral votes. The gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Stile, and the gentleman from New York, Mr. Morrell. Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the House stands in recess until approximately 12:55 p.m.
Okay. So we're gavelled
Welcome to
in.
C-SPAN's live coverage of the 2025 Electoral College vote count. Every 4 years, the House and Senate meet in a joint session where the electoral votes for president and vice president are officially tallied and recorded. In the November election, former President Donald Trump defeated Vice President Kamala Harris, receiving
You better believe he
312
did.
of the 270
Yeah.
electoral votes needed to win the White House. Vice President Harris, in her role as President of the Senate, will preside over today's joint session that confirms Donald Trump's historic reelection. Today's proceedings convene amidst a significant winter storm in Washington.
All right, so we're going to come back on this, my friends. We're going to pay close attention to what's happening today. Let me show you what's happening on the cables. And then we're going to go into some news because I've also got breaking news out of this morning. We had a filing from Trump's defense team, which has now just become public, that we're going to go through today. They are demanding a stay, an automatic stay of the sentencing. All right. So in other words, they're saying the judge doesn't have a choice. You have to stop the sentencing. Last week on Friday, as we were wrapping up, we saw that the judge rescheduled Trump's sentencing to occur on the 10th in just a few days. And now Trump's defense team, as we predicted, was out and about all weekend long, furiously typing and dropping this out, showing now what they've been working on. An affirmation of Trump's defense team, Todd Blanche, who's going into the DOJ, by the way, as the deputy AG. And then they submitted their memo explaining, look, Judge, you don't have a choice. Okay, there's an automatic stay. This thing is stopped for now. Or they're saying, if you don't think it's automatically stopped, then we're asking you for an immediate stay. So then the question is, as we speculated before, what happens now if it is stayed on the 20th when Trump comes into power? Then they definitely cannot sentence him at that point in time by even the judge's own admission. So then are they going to pause and hold the case in abeyance for 4 years and then come and sentence Trump at the end of the 4 years? And is that constitutional? Can he even do that? So we'll go into that. We've got some NOLA updates. We've got some Joe Biden updates. He's snapping at reporters. We've got a Zelensky update. And giant news today. You can see this story just broke fresh out of the oven. Dictator Trudeau is going bye-bye. He has announced his resignation as the Canadian dictator, and we're happy to see him go. Good riddance to him. It has long been speculated, but he made it official today. People were saying it might come out later this week, but nope, fresh out of the oven today. Here is what Dictator Trudeau said.
My friends, as you all know, I'm a fighter. Every bone in my body has always told me to fight because I care deeply about Canadians. I care deeply about this country.
Pathetic.
And I will always be motivated by what is in the best interest of Canadians. And the fact is, despite best efforts to work through it, Parliament has been paralyzed for months after what has been the longest session of a minority parliament in Canadian history. That's why this morning I advised the Governor General that we need a new session of Parliament. She has granted this request, and the House will now be prorogued until March 24th. Over the holidays, I've also had a chance to reflect and have had long talks with my family about our future. Throughout the course of my career, any success I have personally achieved has been because of their support and with their encouragement.
What?
So last night over dinner, I told my kids about the decision that I'm sharing with you today. I intend to resign
Deep breath.
as party leader, as prime minister.
Bye.
After the party selects its next leader.
So
Through
dramatic.
a robust, nationwide, competitive.
Was he a theater
process.
kid? I don't know much about his history. Was he in
Last night,
theater?
I asked the president of the Liberal Party to begin that process. This country deserves a real choice in the next election.
Hopefully they
And it has
get one.
become clear to
They
me
can be our 51st state
that
or
if I'm
not.
having to fight internal battles, I cannot be the best option in that election.
Was he a drama teacher? Are you serious on that? Okay, so he is very dramatic. You can hear that deep sigh. I talked to my children about this decision. About what? Violating the Freedom Convoy truckers' rights as not only Canadians, but as human people, as humans, individuals who deserve to be able to have free speech and the ability to protest against your mandates. The guy was one of the most condescending people in modern global politics. How he lasted so long is a mystery to yours truly, but good riddance to him. Constantly lecturing us about climate change. Canadians don't even have rights to guns anymore like they used to. I mean, I was reading through some of the gun changes over the last 4 or 5 years in Canada. It's crazy what this guy has done. So bye-bye to Trudeau. And what's happening here is very interesting. Trudeau is on his way out. And meanwhile, other world leaders are getting on board the Trump train relatively quickly. You can see, man, I don't think I've ever seen Trump smile this big before, but he is there with Giorgia Meloni from Italy. And he's thrilled, man. Here's this story. You can see Trump praises fantastic woman, Giorgia Meloni. So we've got Dictator Trudeau is gone, and Meloni's out here. She looks pretty happy, too. They're having a great time down there at Mar-a-Lago. She flew over to Florida to meet with Trump on Saturday, right before his election gets certified, as the key European leader is going to boost ties. Members of Mar-a-Lago welcomed her with applause and introduction. Her trip comes days before she's going to meet with Dementia Joe. No details of their meeting have been disclosed. Meloni had planned to talk to Trump about the war in Ukraine. We've got a clip of Zelensky now, who is on with Lex Friedman, saying, yeah, people are very curious as to what Trump can do to solve this war. They're going to talk trade issues, Middle East stuff. Meloni's office declined to comment on the reports, but there she was. There's Trump. We're going to get rid of Dictator Trudeau. I don't know if we can make you the 52nd state, Giorgia Meloni. I don't know. We'll talk about it. We got to work on Canada first, too. She's like, okay, yeah, Mr. President, I understand. We're a little further away. We'll talk about it. She's potentially a strong partner for Trump. According to reports, Trump told the crowd This is very exciting. I'm here with a fantastic woman, the Prime Minister of Italy. She's really taken Europe by storm, says Trump. Look how happy he looks. He's happy. He's going to be certified here very soon. So Trump and Meloni, they sat down for a screening of the documentary that was being shared there by our friend Viva, who was there introducing the panel and introducing the president. Shout out to our friend Viva Fry right next door on Rumble and YouTube. One of the biggest challenges facing Meloni was the arrest of an Italian journalist and another Iranian businessman who was there. So it was a fun time there at Mar-a-Lago. It looks like they had a great fun. And here was some video of them walking in there. Here's Trump and Giorgia Meloni.
Mr. President.
We love you. We're going to be down there. What is it, 8:45? When is the movie start? Supposed to be 7:40. Whatever, we'll be down.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President. Thank
you. So Trudeau's gone. Georgia is in. And you know who else is having some feelings of Trump solutions in the air? It is, of course, Zelensky. He was over on with the Lex Friedman podcast, and now he's saying, everybody's calling to ask how things are going with Trump. Every time I have a text message with Trump, everybody's calling me. What'd he say? What'd he say? What's he going to do? What's his plan? Here's Zelensky on with Lex Friedman. Now, this is originally recorded, I believe, in Russian. And so what they've done is dubbed over this. So this is a translation from Lex.
Because Europe will be looking at us and will be looking at Trump. And by the way, I now see that when I talk about something with Donald Trump, whether we meet in person or we just have a call, all the European leaders always ask, how was it? This shows the influence of Donald Trump. And this has never happened before. With an American president, I tell you, from my experience, this also gives you confidence, that he can stop this war. It won't be long.
It is something that is showing that he has the gravitas to stop this war. So some interesting things are happening. He's not even the president yet. We haven't even certified anything. He was there in Mar-a-Lago over the weekend. And our friend Viva, look at Viva. Look right here, right there on the left. There he is. What's up, Viva? So he's there along with John Eastman. Michael Flynn's in the room. Rudy Giuliani's at the table. Alan Dershowitz is at the table. Look at that panel. And guess who showed up in the middle of this conversation? None other than the president himself. And our friend Viva's there. He posted this. He says, not too often you get the honor of introducing the president of the United States of America. So make sure you're following Viva at the Viva Fry on X and, of course, on Rumble right next door and on YouTube. Here is what this panel looked like, because what's happening is Trump is still facing lawfare. J6ers are still facing lawfare. People like Matthew Graves and others are still arresting people. I still follow the FBI, or we arrested somebody for their violence on January 6th. You're like, it's January 5th, 4 years later, you weird freaks. But they won't let it go. And now Trump is having to appeal his lawfare sentencing, and we're going to go to that in the next segment. But here is what this current batch of lawfare was, with Eastman speaking and Viva there introducing the panel.
Then they gave me the warrant after the fact, and it said, we're taking all of your electronics listed on the attached affidavit. Now, I knew that phone was unlikely to be on the attached affidavit, which to this day they still haven't shown me, because I just bought the phone.
Now, wait who shows up on this one.
It was not the phone I had on January 6th. Didn't matter. And then they could seize all of the data on the phone, but they couldn't look at it, the warrant said, until they get a second warrant that meets the particularity requirements of the Fourth Amendment. And 2 months later, I start getting documents from my phone from a taint team in Portland, Oregon, asking if these particular documents
they are very tainted.
I said, I don't understand how you even have these documents. I read that warrant, and you weren't allowed to look at the content without a subsequent warrant, identifying with particularity the things to be searched and seized.
They just search whatever.
That's the Fourth Amendment.
Professor, if I may interrupt you, I think you might have your client here who could testify as to whether or not it was solicitor-client privilege. I was looking in the back and I thought I saw someone I recognized.
Who is it? It's the president. Get out of here. Crazy, right? So there's Viva in the middle of a panel. Trump comes walking out back there. Music starts playing. Proud to be an American. There's the president. Coming out. Everybody is standing at attention because the president walks into the room. Tons of photographs. What's up? There's Trump. Raises the fist in the air. Viva's just hanging out. He's like, what the heck? He's Mr. President, we're in the middle of a panel here. Excuse me, sir. We're busy. Just kidding. Viva's, of course, a highly trained professional. But incredible what an experience this is. So Trump's there. He shows up and says hello. And then we'll fast forward a little bit. And it goes back right. There's Rudy. There's Eastman. There's Flynn. There's Navarro's out there on the scene. And Dershowitz remains seated. Dershowitz. I'm not standing up for this. All right. So the crowd's cheering a bit.
And we're all going to sit back and enjoy our panel. He's going to enjoy it as well. So everybody, please take your seats. We're going to finish our panel. And thank you.
Okay, nothing like having the president as your audience, and Viva's like just getting right back into it. So pretty cool.
That's a hard act to follow, President.
So, Professor, the question was because you were representing your clients, and there was no respect whatsoever for the basic privilege of solicitor-client.
All right, so Viva gets right back into it, man. Very cool. So shout out to Viva. What an awesome experience. Way to host a panel in front of the president. And shout out to those gentlemen on stage who are there, who've been the victims of this lawfare that is seemingly never ending. In fact, it's still going on today because they want Trump sentenced before his inauguration so that they can call him a convicted felon. But Trump's team and others are defending against that, as we'll talk about shortly. But we added this other clip. Nancy Pelosi was very upset that they have a lawfare documentary that's being discussed and that the lawfare victims are now coming into power. Trump specifically taken over, baby. Pelosi can't stand it.
Was screening a documentary about the 2020 election, claiming his win and trying to talk about the legal challenges he had. There seems to be a continued effort to claim that he won in 2020.
It's really sad. It really is sad. And I don't know about the film that he had and the rest, but it's almost sick that he would be thinking that in 2020. He's won the election now. Mm-hmm. That will be clear. Yeah. That will be clear. And tomorrow he will be clearly
certified.
We will be accepting the results of the Electoral College. So he should be triumphant about that. But to be still trying to fight a fight that he knows he lost is really
he doesn't
sad.
know he lost.
Was screening a documentary about the 2020 election.
Yeah, and how rigged it was.
Look
at her smile.
And trying to talk about the legal challenges he had. There seems to be a continued effort to claim that he won in 2020.
It's really sad.
It was
really
stolen.
Sad. And
it was a sad state of affairs. You guys stole it. You guys stole it from the CIA. You stole it in law by changing the rules during the counting of the votes, by extending deadlines, by making everything mail-in ballot. You had social media companies that were interfacing with the FBI and other entities to censor everybody. It was lunacy. So it was sick. And fortunately, the course of history has been corrected, and President Trump will be coming in and getting certified today. All right. So that is an update there. Now, let me just share with you what's happening over on the cables before we keep going, because we've got a little bit of time left on the clock. You can see it is snowed out all over on the East Coast. We haven't still gotten any snow here in Arizona where I'm at. But what we got is snow all over the place. And we've got, according to CNN, 38 minutes until we gavel back in and we start the counting of the electoral votes officially in the House. But I want to spend a quick bit talking about some news that just broke today, which is that Trump is now going to be appealing his sentencing order. And so let's take a look at that story right here from the president. President Trump is furious that he's now been ordered to appear for sentencing in Judge Mercan's courtroom. This is the false business records case with the porn star Stormy Daniels testifying and the convicted perjurer Michael Cohen testifying. The whole case was rigged by Alvin Bragg and his fake prosecutors from Biden's DOJ. But now that Trump is the president, he's made the argument, you cannot sentence me. I'm transitioning into the White House. You cannot penalize me. And Judge Mercan came back out and said, yes, I can. You will be sentenced, but I'm not going to really penalize you. I just want to label you a convicted felon. I'm not going to give you probation. I'm not going to give you a fine. I'm not going to impose incarceration. You're just going to be a convicted felon, which is still harm, right? You still lose your right to vote, can't possess a firearm. You have the pejorative label of a felon, and it's a big problem. So Trump is very unhappy about it, and his team is now appealing this. In fact, they're actually saying that it's not exactly an appeal. It's saying that you cannot continue moving forward on this, okay? It's a stay of criminal proceedings while they pursue an appeal or higher court. So let's go through these items because they're telling the court that there's not much you can do about this. You cannot sentence President Trump, in other words. And we'll see explicitly what Trump's defense is writing here. But here is what Trump posted after the order came down, and he's very unhappy about it, as he should be. He says, listen, all right, everybody, I never falsified business records. It is a fake, made-up charge by a corrupt judge who is just doing the work of the Biden-Harris Justice Department, an attack on their political opponent, me. He created a case where there was none. He keeps a gag order on me so that I can't talk about how crooked he is or how corrupt his daughter is. The fake news knows all about it, but they refuse to report it. He may be one of the most conflicted judges in New York State history. The accountant testified with total corroborations that the records were perfectly and totally above board. A legal expense was called on the books, a legal expense. There was nothing else it could have been called. This was the so-called falsifying of records. I was hiding nothing. Everything was out in the open for all to see. Every legal scholar of note said there is no case against me. The judge should be disbarred. This is why people and companies are fleeing New York, a corrupt court system. In another crooked New York case, another corrupt judge overturned 5 times on my case alone, the most overturned judge in New York, talking about Areola Engeron, valued Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida at $18 million. When it was worth 50 to 100 times that amount. And then we have also in New York, the woman I never met, celebrity photo lines from 30 years ago, those don't count as meeting, who was awarded almost $100 million, talking about E. Jean Carroll, the woman who paints her trees blue and names her animals after genitals. A totally out of control Trump-hating judge presided over this case. The Biden-Harris DOJ was involved via Matthew Colangelo, who came from Biden's DOJ, directly or indirectly in each of these cases. I won against deranged Jack Smith, who even was so pathetic he dismissed both of his cases. Says there has never been a president who was so evilly and illegally treated as I. Corrupt Democrat judges and prosecutors have gone against the political opponent of a president, me, at levels of injustice never seen before. Corrupt judges or judges so blinded by their hatred of me and my political ideology to make America great again are making a mockery of the United States judicial system, and the world is watching in disgust. Deranged Jack Smith, the evil and sinister prosecutor appointed by crooked Joe Biden to, quote, take me down, was found to be illegally appointed by a corrupt DOJ and FBI. And all of his many charges against me were dropped or dismissed. His illegal raid of my home, Mar-a-Lago, and Melania's closet will go down as one of the dirtiest tricks ever perpetrated by one candidate, as dumb as a rock, Sleepy Joe Biden on another. With all of this said, I still have confidence that the appellate courts will bring justice to America. And that's where Trump is taking this. Every legal scholar has been on his side, saying Alvin Bragg never wanted to do this lawless case. He was furious at the way it was handled, and especially angry at Mark Pomerantz for his behavior and what he did. And remember, Pomerantz was that prosecutor who's a hack, in my opinion, who called Kerry Dunn when Alvin Bragg got elected. We can't prosecute because your case is crap. They threw a hissy fit and ran away. Then Biden sent Colangelo to go work with Bragg, and then the prosecution came back up. Surprise, Trump says. Ultimately, the Biden-Harris DOJ forced Bragg to concoct anything to embarrass Trump. But it was even more so what the corrupt and totally conflicted partisan political hack judge did and is doing on this sham trial. I even have still an unconstitutional gag order where I am not allowed to speak about the judge's highly disqualifying conflicts of interest, his daughter. Virtually every legal scholar and pundit says there is zero case against me. The judge fabricated the facts and the law, no different than the other New York judicial and prosecutorial witch hunts. That's why businesses are fleeing New York, taking with them millions of jobs and billions of dollars in taxes. The legal system is broken, and businesses can't take a chance in getting caught up in this quicksand. It's all rigged, in this case, against a political opponent, me. And Trump is now saying that people are coming back to Congress to vote. And today, of course, is a big day because it's January 6th. So we're going to now see what Trump's team has submitted specifically. 2 filings from President Trump contesting Judge Mercan's order of a sentencing happening on July 10th, saying Trump can zoom in if he wants to, but the judge promises he'll be sentenced, ordered to appear. So Trump's defense has 2 filings that have just dropped. One is an affirmation from Todd Blanche. Todd Blanche has been appointed by President Trump to go into the DOJ as the Deputy Attorney General under Pam Bondi. This is important because Todd Blanche has been defending Trump for years. And now he's going to be in a position of power to right these wrongs. So he writes an affirmation, and simultaneously we have a more thorough explanation of Trump's argument here in the memo, saying that Judge Mercan, you don't have a choice. We filed this paperwork, and now there is an automatic stay of these proceedings, okay? You cannot sentence us on the 10th. And there are consequences to that, because the alternative that was proposed by Mercan and Bragg was to say, okay, we'll just sentence you after 4 years. We'll come back as soon as you leave office, and we'll just sentence you then. The question then becomes, is that constitutional? And so 2 things are happening here, 2 filings. Let's take a look at the affirmation from Todd Blanche. This is the incoming Deputy AG, Todd Blanche, now currently representing and defending President Trump. He says, look, Judge Mercan, here's the deal. I'm a partner at this law firm. I represent President Trump, and I'm submitting a notice to you that there is an automatic stay of proceedings, all right? Meaning you don't have a choice on this. But if you disagree and you think you do have a choice, well, then we're asking you for a stay. Now, this affirmation is submitted upon my knowledge and information and belief, and the source of which is my communications with prosecutors and with other lawyers, review of the case, review of the evidence, and review of this investigation. And so here is what we are submitting in our memo, signed all accordingly by Todd Blanche on behalf of President Trump. Here's the full argument. All right, Your Honor, listen up. President Trump hereby provides notice to you, Judge Mercan, and to Alvin Bragg that he will initiate appellate proceedings on January 6th, today, to challenge both this court's December 16th ruling that is wrongly denying President Trump's immunity motion, which we read here, where Trump said, I have immunity because the Supreme Court said so, and certain activities that I do are constitutionally protected from criminal charges, like talking to my White House comms director called Hope Hicks. I'm allowed to do that. They still brought that in as evidence and presented it in trial as evidence against Trump. Not allowed to do that. Trump said, you can't prosecute me with evidence of which I am immune, for which I am immune. They did that anyways. And then they said, well, it's not really relevant. You didn't really have immunity for those things. And so you lose. So they say, we're appealing that. They're also appealing the January 3rd ruling, which is also wrongly denying Trump's second motion to dismiss, which is based on sitting president immunity and transition immunity, right? If Trump is penalized right now, you're penalizing the incoming president. He's got a job to do, becoming the president. It started now. As discussed herein, Trump's defense says, we're going to appeal this, all right? And that should dismiss this entire politically motivated prosecution that's been flawed from the very beginning, that has been centered around wrongful allegations and false claims from a disgraced, disbarred, serial liar called Michael Cohen, who violated President Trump's due process rights and had no merit at all. We're also seeking interlocutory review, meaning the case is not over and finalized yet. Part of Judge Mercan's justification for sentencing Trump is he's saying, well, once we sentence him, then the case will be closed. Then he'll be convicted, and then he can appeal all of this, because the ordinary rule in criminal proceedings is you can't appeal anything until you're done. Otherwise, everybody would be appealing everything. Judge denied my objection, appeal. And the trials would never get done. So they say you can appeal at the very end. Once there's finality, then the court will review the entire record at the next level court. Here they're saying, no, we're not waiting until he's sentenced. Immunity means you don't have to go through the process and then get vindicated at the end. Otherwise, what good is immunity? Immunity means you're immune. Not that you have to suffer through the pain. We're already appealing this, and we're already appealing this, and you cannot sentence us. Why? Well, due to the fact that further criminal proceedings are automatically stayed by operation of federal constitutional law, which is more supreme than you, buddy, and the court will lack authority to proceed to sentencing. And if you have no authority, then you must immediately vacate the sentencing hearing that's scheduled for January 10th and suspend all proceedings in this case until the conclusion of Trump's appeal on presidential immunity. Because the Supreme Court said there's clearly presidential immunity. 3 buckets of it, or 3 categories of immunity. One of those categories is no immunity. The other category is presumptive immunity. And then the other is absolute immunity. The president is elected to do constitutionally mandated things. If you're doing those things, you can't be prosecuted for that. Mercan is saying, I'm prosecuting you for that. Trump says, you can't. There's a Supreme Court precedent. We're now going to appeal this. You're going to lose. In the alternative, if you think that there is no automatic stay, even though there is, the court should grant an immediate stay of all pending proceedings at your discretion, because you know we're going to be appealing all of this, and you should vacate the sentencing scheduled for January 10th. Trump's defense rights. Before the Supreme Court decided the Supreme Court case of Trump, the only court to consider whether the filing of an appeal on presidential immunity mandates a stay, so if we appeal, is it automatically stayed? The only other court that talked about this was the District of Columbia. And guess what happened there? They held that Trump's appeal, when Trump appealed his last case on presidential immunity grounds, it automatically stays any further proceedings. That was in the Chutkan case. Remember, she stopped everything when Trump appealed based on immunity. It was the right decision. She was right. Mercan was wrong. He did the opposite. That holding was correct. And even Alvin Bragg said that. And the U.S. Supreme Court affirms that. You have to stay this. And so recognizing presidential immunity, the Supreme Court said the essence of immunity is that if you have it, if you have immunity, you don't have to answer for your conduct in court. That's what immunity is. It's not like, well, you kind of have like, you have immunity, but you still have to come in here and be harassed by Alvin Bragg. And then at the end of it, we'll say, well, those charges can't stick, but you still have to be harassed for years on end. No. Because the president is immune from prosecution, a district court's denial of immunity, if you say he doesn't have it, it's appealable before a trial. Now, the trial already happened here, but it's appealable before the pending case moves forward. Saying the Supreme Court repeatedly emphasized there's separation of powers, and it mandates an interlocutory appeal, that it must be available, meaning in the middle of the case, you can appeal it because they're saying you don't have immunity. You're saying I'm immune from this process. Now, accordingly, questions about this must be reviewed. The Constitution does not tolerate impediments to the effective functioning of government, and presidential immunity is a pretty important concept. The Supreme Court's repeated citation of this case is particularly telling. It tells us there should be an automatic stay of trial proceedings while we're on appeal for immunity. And here, at minimum, 3 features of the Supreme Court opinion mandate an automatic stay, meaning there is no sentencing that's going to be happening. It's automatic, Judge. You have no discretion to even decide. All confirming Trump's appellate rights right now. Here's what they are. Now, as noted above, Trump said that the essence of presidential immunity is I don't have to go to court. Forcing a president to continue to defend a criminal case through sentencing and judgments would make him answer in court. That is a flawed interpretation of what's happening here. So if you deny a stay of this, you are going to be violating what the Supreme Court explicitly said is the point of immunity. It is of no moment here, says Trump's defense, that the court has suggested an intention to impose a sentence of an unconditional discharge, which is no penalties at all. Now, while it's indisputable that the fabricated charges in this meritless case from Bragg should never have been brought, and at this point could not possibly justify a sentence even more onerous than that, no sentence is appropriate at all. There are numerous legal errors here, including legal errors that go to Trump's immunity that we're going to address in the Court of Appeals. This court's non-binding preview of its current thinking, like, thanks for telling us you're not going to put him in jail, but it doesn't mitigate these constitutional violations. The Trump court repeatedly rejected this, holding that mere allegations of unlawfulness cannot deprive a president of immunity. The Supreme Court reasoned that if it were otherwise, right, if you could just say, well, you did something bad, therefore you don't have immunity, everybody would just say you did something bad, therefore you don't have immunity. So likewise, Trump's defense says, regarding the government's demand to admit evidence of official acts, they brought in the evidence of Trump's official acts. The government tried to criminalize his official conduct. Now, given that presidential immunity entails immunity from the burdens of criminal litigation, especially sentencing 10 days before he's going to become the president again, the automatic stay would prevent that very injury, which is what the court has confirmed it's for. No penalties from the process. That's what immunity is. Now, continuing, Trump's D says, second, as the U.S. Supreme Court emphasized, the doctrine of presidential immunity nullifies the power of trial courts to act. Congress cannot act on and courts cannot examine the president's actions when they are his conclusive and preclusive constitutional authority. This is so important. This is the separation of powers that we talk about. If the courts can step in and say, sorry, you shouldn't have done that as president, and they're commenting on a president's exclusive duty and their role, that's the court becoming the president. That's separation of powers. They cannot do that. And that's what they're asking the court to do. So this conclusion is even more forceful when it comes to Trump's claim of immunity. All parties agree it becomes comprehensive and absolute. As soon as he takes office, immunity comes back. Sitting president immunity extends to the brief transition period during which he's preparing to assume the office. Dismissed his J6 case and his appeal during the transition period. Their politically motivated charges brought in Florida and D.C., there was no basis there for them to continue to prosecute him. He's now becoming the president. So they've got to dismiss. They did dismiss, and now Merchan is trying to avoid that fate. And third, Judge, the U.S. Supreme Court, they told us that presidential immunity should be resolved in a methodical, orderly fashion, not racing this in for sentencing 10 days before his inauguration. Despite all of that, they're doing the difference here. Allowing a criminal case to proceed to sentencing while a federal appeal is pending and another appeal is pending would constitute highly expedited treatment at its worst. This court's current schedule, which is denying Trump's immunity motion on January 3rd, and then as we pointed this out, scheduling a sentencing hearing just 7 days later, immediately before Trump's inauguration, is one of the most spiteful orders of all time, my words. it's highly expedited, as they reference. Trump doesn't have time to appeal. For example, the rush timing forecloses Alvin Bragg from even making a sentencing submission because the law says his sentencing recommendation has to be served no less than 10 days before sentencing. That's amazing. That's great work. Okay, Judge, you're violating the rules. Before you have sentencing, generally everybody prepares a sentencing report or a pre-sentence memo, PSR, pre-sentence report, or however you call it in your state. You prepare them. The government will prepare theirs. Trump's a criminal. He should be in prison for 2 million years, says Alvin Bragg and Matthew Colangelo. So 2 million years. Everybody comes out on the defense side. Probation only, no penalty, no fines, no jail, absolute minimum. You have an independent so-called probation department or an entity with the court that will do their evaluation. The judge gets these 3 reports, reads them, and then makes their sentence, and comes to a determination based on what everybody put in there. Now, Bragg supposed to give the defense theirs so they got 10 days to review it, but they can't because it got scheduled 7 days later. So he doesn't have enough time to disclose it. It cannot be ignored that this rushed 7-day period between the ruling and the sentencing has been imposed in a case that goes all the way back to 2018. It includes an enormous record. So there's no legal basis to try to rush to get this done, other than the fact that it's your preference to get this done before Trump's inauguration so that Bragg and the judge can tell voters that he completed his case. They have to close the case because once he's president, they can't sentence him anymore, even according to their own rules. And they need to say he's a convicted felon because that's all they live for now. Now, likewise, in such appeals, whether the litigation may go forward in the district court is what they must decide. And so common practice is to enter a stay. When you're appealing it, stop the underlying proceedings, which is what they're saying should happen now. The automatic stay of this is required by the Trump Supreme Court case, by the Coinbase case, which was like a 2023 case. It just broke. And it said that Trump relied on Coinbase to get the immunity decision at the Supreme Court. And they're all stacking up now. So presidential immunity based on official acts, he's raising an appeal on that, and he's raising absolute sitting president immunity. Both those things are going up. And so now it is appropriate to pause and appeal. There was widespread admission of evidence of immune official acts. Judge Merchan allowed a bunch of it in. Immunity from the evidentiary misuse of official acts is not allowed. Bragg used official acts evidence to probe his motives, and the judge allowed it. But the courts have already said that would cripple the proper administration of the presidential branch. The president's immune conduct would then be subject to examination by a jury. The jury doesn't get to decide what a president is allowed or not allowed to do when the president is explicitly allowed to do it. They're not elected president. The president is. Because evidentiary use immunity implicates constitutional concerns, there has to be an automatic stay. And second, Trump's claim of sitting president immunity implicates all the same things. All parties agree, even Bragg, that once Trump becomes the president, he will be absolutely immune from any criminal state or federal crimes under the doctrine of sitting president immunity. But this court's decision to schedule a sentencing on the 10th, the apex of the presidential transition, 10 days before Trump takes office, necessitates that Trump will be forced to continue to defend this case as he's transitioning in. Moreover, Bragg could also appeal the sentencing determination if they don't like it. Then, under the current schedule, instead of facing no further criminal proceedings, Trump could be forced to deal with criminal proceedings for years, which is the exact opposite of what the sitting president immunity doctrine requires. And it's opposite of what the American people want. We just elected this guy. Forcing Trump to prosecute or even defend another criminal term could remand this case for another criminal trial, even during his term. Now, moreover, Trump's defense says the prospect of imposing a sentencing on Trump just before he assumes office raises another restriction on liberty. He's got travel restrictions, reporting requirements, registration, probation, all other things. You cannot hit him with that under sitting president immunity. These are constitutional errors. They would cause major problems, and they cannot be allowed. Now, because the right of interlocutory appeal in the middle of this case and an automatic stay of which you have no discretion, it follows that the same rights stop the trial court from forcing Trump to undergo a sentence while the appeal is pending. So president's immunity from suit extends to immunity of sentencing, and Trump must be afforded the opportunity to litigate his appeal before you drag him in here and sentence him. Undergoing a criminal sentencing is the most extreme example of having to answer for conduct in court. That's exactly what presidential immunity and an automatic stay forbids. Now, to be clear, the filing of Trump's appeal on immunity, they're telling Judge Merchan, just to be clear, you have no choice, Judge, okay? It automatically stays this case. You have no decision, you have no discretion to make here. The sentencing date on January 10th is now gone. Do you understand us, is what they're saying. Stays further criminal proceedings in this court, including the imminent sentencing hearing scheduled for the 10th, because we're appealing this. And it does so as a matter of federal constitutional law. Don't care if you like it or not. As the Supreme Court decision makes clear, this automatic stay is an essential part of presidential immunity. It comes from the Constitution. As a matter of constitutional law, presidential immunity binds New York courts and you, Merchan, under the Supremacy Clause. And when judicial authority is invoked on behalf of the United States, you have to buckle and bend. There is now no conflict between the Supreme Court's automatic stay doctrine and your case law here. Trump is entitled to a stay under New York law too. Under New York law, the court may stay further proceedings, and they routinely stay these things all the time, citing a bunch of New York cases. Such stays of criminal proceedings include cases granting a stay to stop the trial court from conducting a sentencing. They can also include stays at the prosecution's request, not just the defense. Another part of the law says you can also stay all further proceedings under Article 78. And that's what should happen here. In fact, it would be astonishing if such a stay, which is routinely granted in garden variety criminal cases, if this routine stay were denied to a president of the United States, asserting claims of presidential immunity from prosecution that raises multiple and momentous questions about the powers of the president and the limits of his authority under the Constitution. And so Trump's defense writes in conclusion, listen, Judge, by virtue of President Trump's filing of appellate proceedings raising his claims of immunity, all proceedings in this court are automatically stayed by operation of federal constitutional law. In the alternative, even if such a stay were discretionary, and it's not, the court should grant a stay. So you have no choice. But if you think you do, we ask that you grant it for us. The court should vacate the sentencing hearing scheduled for the 10th, suspend all further deadlines until Trump's immunity appeals are fully and finally resolved, which should result in a dismissal of this case, which should have never been brought in the first place. Further, President Trump respectfully requests his courts notify the parties by 2 p.m. today whether this court intends to proceed with sentencing on the 10th, which should not occur, notwithstanding Trump's interlocutory appeal to allow sufficient time for Trump to seek emergency appellate review. And so incoming Deputy AG and Assistant Deputy AG Emil Bove, Todd Blanche and Emil Bove, they're now giving Judge Merchan an order. We want you to respond by Monday, January 6th at 2 p.m. on our desk. Now, and we'll see what Judge Merchan does. But they're right, actually. And I think even you can see evidence of this in Judge Chutkan's pathetic acceptance of admission that this is true when she stayed everything in the January 6th case at the federal level. And even when Jack Smith was filing motions to continue discovery and all sorts of stuff, they no, Trump's, nope, you're done. Stop filing anything. And they said, well, it's like a placeholder. And nope, don't care. Even Judge Chutkan had to come back out and scold Jack Smith and say, yeah, you got to stop filing these things because you don't have the power to do it. Trump is making the same argument. Judge Merchan has a little bit of a distinguishing factor here in that this is a state case, not a federal case. But I think when you bring in the full weight of the Supremacy Clause and all of the transition rules, what is happening here is them trying to find an out, find a sneaky route to get him sentenced before Trump can even respond. And Trump's defense, you got to hand it to them, and they were working hard over this weekend, and they have come back with a banger, and it's a good filing. So we're going to keep our eye on this. Judge Mercan, the clock is ticking. Get your answer on our desk by the close of day. All right, and now, my friends, let's turn our attention to the certification, because here's what's happening. CNN's got the countdown timer. We got 7 minutes, 48 seconds left. They're on a commercial. We've got updates on Joe Biden here over from Fox. Biden's labeling Trump a real threat to democracy. I might have had that actually queued up
Trump
here.
won, and we couldn't do nothing about it.
A Biden comment. Here, yeah, here's Biden. Here's Biden. I think I have that comment here. Here's Biden specifically saying this. Joe Biden snaps at a